Welcome to Defense Briefing. The content of the briefing includes election race too close to call as voters prepare to go to polls. Sunak's Tories worry reset fell short of UK election turnaround. Russia detains 3 Navalny lawyers. What the papers say, October 14. Israel-Gaza war, why is Africa divided on supporting Palestine? Election race too close to call as voters prepare to go to polls. The Guardian. Poland is preparing for a parliamentary election on Sunday, with polls indicating that the incumbent Law and Justice, Peace, government and the main opposition coalition led by Donald Tusk are running neck and neck. During a negative campaign, Peace has accused Tusk's coalition of treason, while Tusk has warned that the vote is the last opportunity to save democracy in Poland after the Peace government has curtailed democratic freedoms. Tusk has pledged to relax the nation's strict anti-abortion laws and improve rights for LGBTQ+ people. He has also promised to rebuild relations with the EU, after the Peace government's alleged attacks on the rule of law. Sunak's Tories worry reset fell short of UK election turnaround. Bloomberg. UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is facing a growing sense of unease within his Conservative Party following a lackluster party conference and a slump to his lowest approval rating in a poll. Sunak has a narrow window of time to narrow the double-digit polling gap between the Tories and Labour before he must call a national vote by January 2025. Doubt is being cast on Sunak's conference strategy of making a series of policy announcements on niche areas unlikely to win many votes, with one Tory MP suggesting Sunak should take more advice from cabinet colleagues and not fight the election in a presidential style. Meanwhile, Labour leader Keir Starmer's conference, which focused on pragmatic policies, was generally well received, but party strategists are said to be warning against complacency. Russia detains 3 Navalny lawyers. Deutsche Welle. Russian authorities have detained 3 lawyers representing imprisoned opposition leader Alexei Navalny, his aides said on Friday. The lawyers were detained as part of a criminal case on charges of participating in an extremist organization. Navalny's supporters believe that the charges are intended to isolate him and send a warning to other lawyers not to defend him or other political prisoners. Navalny is currently serving a 19-year prison sentence and is recognized as a political prisoner by international human rights organizations. He is scheduled to be moved to a harsher prison facility that will severely restrict his contact with his lawyers and family. What the papers say, October 14. The Independent. The front pages of Saturday's newspapers in the UK are dominated by the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas. The Daily Telegraph, The Independent, and The Guardian all report on Israel sending military forces into Gaza as Palestinians try to flee the chaos. The Daily Express leads with a plea from the Archbishop of Canterbury for civilians who cannot bear the cost of terrorists to be given a chance at life. The FT Weekend reports on residents being told to leave Gaza City by the Israeli military, while the Daily Mail focuses on Israel's tanks striking into Gaza. The Times features a story on a disabled teenage girl who is one of 150 people taken hostage by Hamas. The Daily Mirror reports that police in the UK were on high alert for a potential terror attack on Friday due to the situation in the Middle East. Other headlines include Andrew Flintoff's £9 million compensation payout from the BBC over his Top Gear crash and a freaky clown taunting police in a sleepy village. Israel-Gaza war, why is Africa divided on supporting Palestine? Al Jazeera. African countries are divided in their response to the recent conflict between Israel and Palestine, with some nations supporting Israel and others supporting Palestine. Kenya, Zambia, Ghana, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo have aligned with Israel's position, while South Africa and Algeria have expressed solidarity with Palestine. The divisions in Africa's stance on the issue highlight each government's attempt to compartmentalize its interests and underline some countries' strengthening ties with Israel. Israel's appeal to Africa lies in its agricultural technology, trade relations, security interests, and humanitarian aid efforts. However, Israel has also faced setbacks in Africa, with its observer status in the African Union suspended in February 2022, after Algeria and South Africa protested the move. Despite the divisions, experts say that African countries' differing positions on the Israel-Palestine conflict are not surprising and are similar to divisions seen in other global conflicts. However, there is growing pressure from civil society in some African countries, such as South Africa, for governments to take a clearer position in favor of Palestine. Rules of war, international law and the Israel-Hamas conflict. Financial Times. The ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas has raised questions about the laws governing warfare and their relevance to the situation in Gaza. The laws of war are derived from international treaties, humanitarian law, and customary law. They cover areas such as the rights of states to defend themselves, the degree of force they may use, and the protection of non-combatants. A key principle is that political causes, including occupations, do not justify the intentional or indiscriminate killing of civilians. While Israel withdrew its troops from Gaza in 2005, it has maintained a blockade on the territory since 2007. The UN still considers Gaza to be occupied. The laws of war also prohibit hostage-taking and the deliberate harming of non-combatants. Military operations in civilian areas are only permitted if precautions are taken to minimize harm to civilians. Siege tactics, such as the deprivation of basic services, are also prohibited. However, the enforcement of these laws can be challenging, particularly as Israel is not a member of the International Criminal Court. Can influx of wartime migrants help Kazakhstan reboot its slowing economy? SCMP opinion. Kazakhstan's brain drain, caused by the country's inadequate tertiary education and the lure of better opportunities abroad, may be starting to reverse as a result of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. The invasion has caused massive individual and corporate migration from Russia to Kazakhstan, creating a new opportunity for economic growth and talent acquisition. However, Kazakh policymakers risk missing this opportunity due to conflicting policy goals and concerns about upsetting Russia. The government has tightened immigration policies and introduced language and cultural requirements for naturalization, which may hinder the integration of Russian migrants and the country's economic upgrade. Brown, John Calipari's Kentucky youth formula might be recipe for basketball disaster. Yahoo! The Kentucky Wildcats head coach John Calipari is hoping his latest batch of young talent can achieve what has been missing for the last 5 years and reach the Final Four. The Wildcats' failure to progress further than the second round of the NCAA tournament since 2019 has put Calipari under pressure. UK fans are becoming increasingly frustrated with his strategy of recruiting one-and-done players, which they believe is preventing the team from reaching its potential. Hamas must be destroyed. The Toronto Star. As the conflict between Israel and Hamas continues to escalate, the Toronto Sun has published an opinion piece calling for the destruction of Hamas. The article describes the recent attacks by Hamas as the worst attack on Israel since the Yom Kippur War in 1973 and accuses Hamas supporters of outrageous advocacy and embracing of the abomination. The author argues that there is no moral relativism in methodical mass murder and states that there is no place on earth where Jews are safe. The article concludes by stating that the eradication of Hamas must be achieved and that Israel will have to wage this counter-war alone. The author acknowledges that the conflict will likely erode moral support in world capitals and criticizes the UN for denouncing Israel's aggressive response. The article concludes by stating that civilians will die in great numbers and that Hamas will have more blood on its hands. The Toronto Sun has been criticized for publishing this article and for its coverage of the conflict. Reuters journalist killed in Lebanon in missile fire from direction of Israel. Nikkei Asia. A Reuters video journalist has been killed and 6 other journalists injured in southern Lebanon after missiles struck them coming from the direction of Israel. The journalists were working near Alma al-Shab, a region close to the Israeli border where there has been ongoing conflict between the Israeli military and Lebanese militia Hezbollah. Although the Israel Defense Forces did not respond to Reuters' request for comment, Israel's UN envoy, Gilad Erdan, stated that whilst the country would investigate, we're in a state of war, things might happen. Ladies and gentlemen, Sixth Doctor here, your resident observer from the sixth dimension. Let's dive into today's news. In Poland, the parliamentary election is too close to call as voters prepare to go to the polls. The incumbent Law and Justice, Peace, government and the main opposition coalition led by Donald Tusk are running neck and neck. It's been a negative campaign, with Peace accusing Tusk's coalition of treason and Tusk warning that the vote is the last opportunity to save democracy in Poland. Tusk has promised to relax anti-abortion laws and improve LGBTQ+ rights, as well as rebuild relations with the EU. It's a high-stakes election that could have far-reaching consequences. Meanwhile, UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is facing unease within his Conservative Party following a lackluster party conference and a drop in his approval rating. Sunak has a narrow window of time to narrow the gap between the Tories and Labour before a national vote must be called. Doubt is being cast on Sunak's conference strategy, with some suggesting he should take more advice from cabinet colleagues and not fight the election in a presidential style. On the other hand, Labour leader Keir Starmer's conference was generally well received, but party strategists are warning against complacency. It's a tough road ahead for Sunak as he tries to turn things around. In Russia, the authorities have detained 3 lawyers representing imprisoned opposition leader Alexei Navalny. It's believed that the charges are intended to isolate Navalny and send a warning to other lawyers not to defend him or other political prisoners. Navalny is already serving a 19-year prison sentence and is recognized as a political prisoner by international human rights organizations. The situation is getting even more dire as he is scheduled to be moved to a harsher prison facility that will severely restrict his contact with his lawyers and family. It's a concerning development in an already troubling case. Moving on to the conflict between Israel and Hamas, the front pages of UK newspapers are dominated by the ongoing violence. The situation is escalating, with Israel sending military forces into Gaza and Palestinians trying to flee the chaos. The Archbishop of Canterbury has made a plea for civilians who cannot bear the cost of terrorists to be given a chance at life. The tensions are high, and there are fears of potential terror attacks in the UK due to the situation in the Middle East. It's a volatile situation that demands attention and resolution. Speaking of the Israel-Palestine conflict, African countries are divided in their response to the recent conflict. Some nations support Israel, while others support Palestine. The divisions highlight each government's attempt to compartmentalize its interests and underline some countries' strengthening ties with Israel. Israel's appeal to Africa lies in its agricultural technology, trade relations, security interests, and humanitarian aid efforts. However, there is growing pressure from civil society in some African countries for governments to take a clearer position in favor of Palestine. It's a complex issue that reflects the global divisions on the conflict. The conflict between Israel and Hamas also raises questions about the laws governing warfare. The laws of war cover areas such as the rights of states to defend themselves, the degree of force they may use, and the protection of non-combatants. Key principles include the prohibition of intentional or indiscriminate killing of civilians, hostage-taking, and deliberate harm to non-combatants. However, enforcing these laws can be challenging, particularly as Israel is not a member of the International Criminal Court. It's a reminder that even in times of conflict, there are rules that should be followed. Shifting gears to Kazakhstan, the country's brain drain may be starting to reverse due to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Massive migration from Russia to Kazakhstan is creating a new opportunity for economic growth and talent acquisition. However, conflicting policy goals and concerns about upsetting Russia may hinder the integration of Russian migrants and the country's economic upgrade. It's a delicate balancing act for Kazakh policymakers as they navigate this new reality. On the sports front, the Kentucky Wildcats head coach John Calipari is under pressure as his strategy of recruiting one-and-done players is being criticized. The Wildcats' failure to progress further in the NCAA tournament has left fans frustrated and questioning Calipari's approach. It's a make-or-break season for Calipari as he looks to prove his critics wrong and lead his team to the Final Four. Lastly, the Toronto Sun has published an opinion piece calling for the destruction of Hamas. The article describes the recent attacks by Hamas as methodical mass murder and argues that there is no place on earth where Jews are safe. The piece has sparked controversy, with critics accusing the Toronto Sun of biased coverage. It's a sensitive topic that highlights the complexities and differing perspectives on the conflict. And that's a wrap for today's news. Remember, your thoughts and opinions matter. So, what do you think about these stories? Do you have any burning questions or interesting insights to share? Let's hear it. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.